the July 27th, 2022 City of Annapolis Environmental Commission meeting. I'm joining you as a chair, and I'd like to turn it over to the vice chair and give some go and have a roll call. You can share who you are.
All right. Hi, everyone. Allison Colden, Vice Chair, Ward 7.
Jeremy Hansen, member, Ward 5. It's Paul
Murphy, Ward 2.
And tonight we have a guest here, Eric Lashinsky. You want to just say hello?
Hey, Eric Lashinsky, Chief of Comprehensive Planning for City of Annapolis in the Planning and Zoning Department. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And we have Racine as well on here. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, Racine Hodo, City of Annapolis City Manager's Office, and I'm taking minutes.
Thank you very much. So today we are kind of just picking up where we left off, as well as introducing some newer things or newer discussions. More recently, we had some issues around Park Preserve and Quiet Waters Park and some other things. So we're going to touch on a few things, but as well as allow for Eric to share a little bit about his initiatives as it relates to his outreach and access plan, water access plan. And moreover, what he needs from us as the commission and how we can be more supportive and what he has going on through our networks and our abilities. And I hope everyone saw the agenda, so we'll just move right along with that. And we have a motion to approval of the minutes from last month.
Yeah, I sent the minutes last minute today. I apologize for that, but hopefully you were able to take a look at them prior to the meeting. I can pull them up if you need me to.
I was able to view them. And if anyone hasn't, they can do that, I'm sure.
Move to approve.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay. All right. So we'll go to Prudent Minutes. And we have someone taking notes as well, so that's great. Looks like Jackie just joined on too, so we'll welcome her as well. If you want to just say hello and your name and maybe what your department.
Hello, everybody. Jackie, just be hanging out during the meeting, and let me know when you want me to jump in, Randy, and give an update on anything.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for joining us. So moving right along into the agenda, reports from committees or members of such committees. And do we have where do you want to start out with reporting out? Allison, what do you think is the first what do you want to go into first as far as committees? We have the list of everybody's kind of tentative positions and committees, correct?
Yeah. Did you want to start with the latest Environmental Matters Committee?
Yeah, we can start there. Yep. So I was able to attend the meeting. I actually had to leave a little before I was actually able to address the bench, but I did leave them with the information. And I also did speak on the USNA golf course project. And I left them two different letters. One was from, I think it was Diane, and the other one was what was sent out as like an information collection regarding a project preserve. So I will be at the next Environmental Matters meeting. I'll make sure I plan to sit there for 3 to 6 hours because I sat there for about 3.5 hours, and I kind of didn't. I had another engagement. I had to take my daughter to swim her swim thing. So lesson learned there.
It's really not that long. It was because it's usually not that.
Gotcha. And okay, so yeah, so moreover, Environmental Matters. It was a good meeting. They brought up some issues, much of what we've been talking about. The two landowners. I'm sorry, the the developer were whoever's in charge of the project on RST Allen Boulevard was there. They had a long discussion about ownership of, changing ownerships and pushing through for development. And I think there was some motions for them to do a halt on their development right now until they got some more answers in that regard. So that was that Environmental Matters. But they also talked about the USNA golf course expansion project, and I'm not sure if anybody else saw. I know Jeremy shared the Baltimore Sun article that just came out, I think today or yesterday, about the USNA. Was it you that shared that? Okay, it was in the Slack word. But if you haven't, I would suggest checking it out and giving it a look. I can share that with you all after the meeting is over as well. Make a note of that.
Randy, I know you had to leave early. Maybe Jackie can weigh in if you weren't there, but do you know the vote on I think the RST Allen one is Rocky Gorge. Does that sound familiar, the development project?
Yes, that's Rocky Gorge. So that Alderwoman Finlayson, who is the sponsor of that resolution for the stop work order, withdrew it for 90 days. And she did not provide her reason, but we did meet with the developer Monday, or was that last Friday? Oh, I think it was Monday. And we had a good conversation with them about things they can do there and work that they're doing to make sure that they're meeting all the requirements by code. And they had some ideas about things they could do there regarding traffic and any other concern, and possibly adding more units to that site, which was a concern of moderately priced units, concern of Alderwoman Finlayson. So while they're working on perhaps revising the plan for Rocky Gorge, she withdrew her resolution.
Okay, so thank you, Jackie. Are those things about more moderately priced dwelling units and traffic, are those sort of in response to the fact that the approvals are so old and they don't have to meet the current requirements for adequate public facilities and things like that?
Well, she partly. They're not sure they can really add any more units, but they said they would look at it because they're not sure that they can, it will make sense financially for them to continue. However, one item of concern, so she's using this opportunity.
I'm having a hard time hearing you, Jackie. Is anyone else having
Yeah,
a hard time?
She's breaking up a lot for me as well.
Break.
Can you hear me?
Yep, yeah, we can. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so
It went out again, Jackie. It's just a little spotty, I think, prior to service, a little spotty.
Okay. Well, my question was answered for the moment. It was just whether or not the stop work order resolution did move forward, and Jackie answered that for me. So I'm good for now. Thank you, Jackie.
And we'll,
Alderwoman Finlayson and where, there's been discussion, community to sit down with the developer and the community about the development, how large it was are coming up, and then to get some concessions from the developer. One in particular, which was of concern to Alderwoman Finlayson, was the access road to that community, and creating less traffic and less interference with existing communities. The developer, when we had the meeting on Monday, was very amenable to that suggestion. In fact, liked the location much better that Alderwoman Finlayson was proposing. With regard to moderately priced units, they're not sure they can do that, but they might be able to move some things around. They're going to look at it. So they're taking this opportunity to look at some of the changes in the law and how they might accommodate them, even though they don't have to. So, and the Office of Law did provide Alderwoman Finlayson with what I had already told the Environmental Commission, that there is no violation per our code, and therefore no legal reason you can issue a stop work order at that site.
right, and I think that's what was talked about in the meeting, but I'm trying to get a more encouragement of this level of involvement, because ultimately, there are people on there that could make it tougher, make it hard.
So what, the Environmental Committee can do is they can make propose revisions to the code that after a certain period of time, certain reviews have to be done, such as, any changes in our law have to looked at. Right now, if a forest conservation plan is over 5 years old, that has to be reviewed. But this permit was already approved before those amendments were made to the Forest Conservation Act. So that 5-year re-review does not apply to Rocky Gorge.
So what do you suggest is maybe a solution to this, or a going forward approach?
Well, that's what I'm saying. The Environmental Commission could make a recommendation if you so choose, to the members of the Environmental Matters Committee, that legislation needs to be enacted to revise the code to require reviews of permits after a certain period of time has elapsed and there's been nothing done at the site.
Let's
no
do it.
substantial improvements been done at the site.
Let's do it. Anybody want to? I think that's something that we should probably put together. I think it'd be worthy, and it would be. Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
I think that Alderman Savage already has some language, or was thinking of incorporating that into a resolution of some kind. So we could review that language and endorse it, or make recommended suggestions to it. Randy, if you want to have us support.
I think he is considering doing that as legislation. More binding than a resolution would be actual code revisions, but I've been talking to him this week about it. He may be thinking about doing a resolution too, Allison, directing, planning and zoning to look at the code. But
So, if he's doing it, do we both need to do it, you think? Or should we just maybe provide support for his?
Well, maybe you should have Alderman Savage, just check in with him. I can do that too and let you know what he's thinking. And then the commission could support what he's doing at the next meeting. They won't meet in August, but in September, you could testify in support of what he's proposing, if he has a proposal by then. Or you can just testify that you think there needs to be a change made.
Okay. Thank you very much. Before I go any further, this may be a little out of the order of the schedule, but I do want to let Eric go ahead because I'm sure he has things to do in his life. But it's wonderful, muggy evening here in the city. So Eric, are you prepared to go ahead now? Is that
I
fine?
am. Yeah. Thanks so much, Mr. Chair.
Because we can get talking on a subject and it'll be
Yeah, I can tell. I can see you could.
fun.
All right, let me share my screen and we can take it from there. Let's see. Hold on a second. No. There we go. All right. You can see my screen okay?
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks. Thanks for giving me the time to get you caught up on this, the public water access plan that we're doing here as part of our comprehensive planning for the city. It's the city's first public water access plan. Hard to believe for a city that has so much waterfront, but as you can see by this cover slide, only a small fraction of our total waterfront is actually publicly accessible. So for people who live here, that's maybe not be a surprise, but I think we're much more aware in general of that today than we've ever been. There's a lot of people who have made this an issue, and I sometimes frequently say there's sort of three real existential issues in the city. Climate change is the big one, affordable housing, and then water access. I think without equitable public water access in a city like ours, it's so tied to the culture and the economy, we really risk losing the very essence of what makes Annapolis this place that we love. So just going to kind of give a little bit of an overview here of how we're approaching the plan. The modern concern over public water, as I think of it, as beginning when our downtown waterfront and Eastport waterfronts transitioned from primarily industrial or working waterfront to a leisure waterfront, where we began to welcome, pleasure boats, and renamed our waterway here Ego Alley. So that really, for me, that's the beginning of thinking about our waterfront as something that should be accessible to everybody, for recreation and health, and all the other benefits that come from economic opportunity and so forth. Obviously we are doing the city dock plan, the reimagining of the city dock, and that process is well underway. That's kind of in the background here. I think that then shines a light on everything else in the city that we're not addressing to the same degree. I think there's very few places in Annapolis that there's really nothing that compares to the city dock area as far as a civic space. So it deserves the attention it's getting. But we have a waterfront on multiple other creeks that have various other issues that we have to confront. And then we did the Maritime Task Force last year that resulted in this strategy document that's called Strengthening the Industry, the Maritime Task Force Strategy. And that was not principally supposed to be about public water access. It was about preserving, expanding, enhancing our maritime industry from an economic perspective, primarily, and part of our culture. But inevitably, water access became a big topic within the task force discussions, partly because the maritime zones in the city that you can see in this map, they're the colored areas, downtown and Eastport and the backside of Back Creek. There's water access opportunities within those zones, plenty of them, many existing street end parks. You have Ellen Moyer Park, you have City Dock. And so there's opportunities to expand and improve those water access locations and partner with other property owners. And so that's kind of discussion that came about. And really the big recommendation was to do this city's first comprehensive public water access plan. And we're fortunate that Wendy O'Sullivan from the National Park Service, the Chesapeake superintendent for NPS, was on the task force. And she, we really, frankly, we asked the Park Service to help us do this public water access plan, and they obliged. And what they did is they brought, as far as a planning consultant, they brought in this group called the Volpe Center that is part of the U.S. Department of Transportation. So a lot of their work is not necessarily water related, but it's a part of what they do. And they're kind of interesting group. I mean, they're like a research arm of the U.S. Department of Transportation. They do a lot of projects for national parks around the country that are dealing with traffic issues, clogging the roads, trying to get people through parks more efficiently and more sensitively. Most of their work is for other federal agencies. And they had done this plan that I'm showing here for the Mississippi River in the Twin Cities that I was really taken by, because it's one of the only places in the country where I've seen a paddle share program, kind of like what we have with the bird bikes and scooters right now. They have something like that for kayaks there. And that was an idea that I was thinking might be good for Annapolis, make paddling more accessible to more people. So anyhow, Volpe is our consultant on this project, and we've started to work with them. And we kicked off this project publicly in May, but we had been kind of working up before that on the scope of the project and meeting regularly with Volpe and the National Park Service to get the project underway, and a lot of federal paperwork to get Volpe on board. But one of the first things they did was this appears to be a very basic map, but it actually was a very critical step in the process, just simply mapping all of the existing public water act sites that we know of and squaring away the naming conventions for them, which is just harder than it sounds. I mean, if you can imagine, just in the Eastport Peninsula, you have street end parks on both sides of the peninsula. Some have, on the same street, and they all have different names. Some named after people, some just named after their location. We use different names all over the place in different official documents. And so we really had to square that away, make sure we were talking about the right places. I'm going to blow up this a little bit because we have all this on a dedicated website for the project. And so you can kind of zoom in at home and see here. It's still hard to see, but these are the categories that made most sense to use to describe the existing water access locations. First off, it's the ones that the city maintains. And then we have these public access easements, and those, we're going to probably uncover more of those that we're not aware of. That some, they're not really identified as parks. People don't know that they're publicly accessible. These are sort of small strips of land. Usually there's a stormwater pipe underneath them. In fact, most of the street end parks that we have today are there because there was a stormwater outfall. And during Ellen Moyer's time as like a city councilwoman and then as mayor, the realization that we could be doing more with these easements became a thing. And she really pushed through a lot of these, even without, in many cases, we didn't have clear title to some of them. So we're trying to grapple with some of that now, but the city maintains them. They're not ones that are street end parks are today that are maintained by the city. I mean, there's consensus that they should be parks, and And, the majority of them are pretty clear in terms of their ownership. But we have these privately managed open spaces like St. Luke's, or even the St. John's waterfront. It's fairly accessible, but still part of the college. And then, we have county parks, obviously, some of which are maintained by the city. Bates Heritage. Well, no, I'm saying Bates Athletic Complex is owned by the county, but maintained by the city, and same with the spaces around Germantown. But in terms of waterfront parks, they're all county managed. You can see those in the dark green here. So let me keep moving here. So one of the major points here, reasons why we're doing this, we do have an extremely unique, interesting, dynamic set of existing water access locations. It may be a small fraction of our total waterfront, but we have a real variety of places that you can see on the left. But we have just as many barriers to access. And I mean, it's things as innocuous as restaurants that may not seem as inviting to everybody, but I love waterfront dining just as much as the next person. Having a drink on the water is great. We're just trying to be mindful that if our waterfront was full of restaurants, that wouldn't be accessible to everybody. And in fact, one thing that came out of the Maritime Task Force was this recommendation, and it kind of ended up in the zoning code actually, that with new restaurants within the maritime zones, they do have to provide public access, and that's kind of spelled out in a specific way. So that means a separate area that you don't have to eat at, that somebody could go down and not necessarily put a kayak in the water, but kind of get close to the water, and particularly after hours when the restaurant might be closed. The water taxi system, this isn't a knock against the water taxi system per se. It's used widely by itinerant boaters and transient boaters. It goes to a lot of locations, but the price point isn't really accessible to most residents. There is a cost to operating it, no doubt, diesel and staffing, and maybe when they eventually go electric, the costs will come down a lot. But right now, I wouldn't say it's something that the typical resident uses much, more the tourists. We obviously have a ton of marinas in the city, and it's the sort of the lifeblood of the city in a way, but those eat up a lot of the waterfront and make for not very accessible waterfront to people who don't have a boat. And then we have places like this on lower right in Hawkins Cove, where we have a dilapidated pier and opportunity that is just kind of not accessible today, really. But this one, as you all know, is going into a design phase very soon, and is going to become a great water access point for city residents really soon. I came into my job I think it was right after this incident. And so for me, having read about this in the newspaper, not being really involved in the city yet, I mean, this was kind of a watershed moment, to pun intended, I guess. I mean, it's a tragic incident, but I think it really highlights the work we have to do. And, I think this was a point of departure for the plan as well. It's the city we live in today is different than one many of us grew up in, where sort of the not in my backyard mentality is now, very pervasive. And we're trying to confront that with this plan, I would say. from the comprehensive plan, we're kind of borrowing this idea of having a clear metric for socially vulnerable communities. This is what we're borrowing from the CDC, their social vulnerability index or criteria, which you can see in the upper right. It's all of these various factors that contribute to whether a person or a community is socially vulnerable. And we map that for the city based on the census blocks. And you can see the area around College Creek here. The Clay Street area is ranks as the highest in social vulnerability. This area along Forest Drive is up there as well, and you know, along Spot Creek here in Eastport, and then nationally, you can see where all these blue areas are. That's where the highest vulnerability is across the country. So it's a lot in the South. We use that. We kind of overlaid our water access locations map on top of that social vulnerability map. And although, you know, you have plenty of social vulnerability farther away from our waterfront, you do have these, you know, I'm kind of highlighting these two locations that we've really zeroed in on as high priorities for investment, College Creek and Hawkins Cove. And we have two active projects there. The renamed Robert H. Eads Park on College Creek at the end of Clay Street, where Clay becomes Glenwood Avenue, across the street from the Morris Blum Senior Apartments. And that is in the final stages of its design process. It's basically in approaching 100% construction documents right now. So that's real exciting. And then the Hawkins Cove project is going into design. There's an RFP that's about to go out for that. So this is just a glimpse of why the Hawkins Cove project is so important. Besides being a gap in our water access network and close to a community that really needs water access, benefit from it. It's that link to Truxton Park that really, where we've invested millions of dollars in recent years. The new pool, Pitt Moyer Rec Center, the tennis courts. So there's an informal trail, as most of you know, that goes through here today, and we're going to make that more clear and really kind of make that connection better. And this is tied into the larger revitalization effort at Eastport Terrace and Harbor House, the housing authority communities there right here. That's a planning process that we're doing separate from public water access, but they really, I mean, part of that is aimed at improving all of the public amenities. And so this is a big part of it. And I'm excited to coordinate with that project. And this is just a basic idea of what we're working with at College Creek that kind of shows potential. This isn't a map that has really been vetted by any of the partners, stakeholders along the creek. It's just something that we're using to share that there is a lot of public waterfront along College Creek, probably more than anywhere else. It's just not accessible today. And so a lot of it just hasn't seen the investment. The city has a relatively small portion of it. We have the Robert Eads Park here that we're investing in right now. We have small Northwest Street End Park right here between the cemeteries. But, you know, the county has a large parcel around Adams Elementary. There's this parcel here that's split between USNA and Maryland, state of Maryland, and that's where we're planning for what we're calling Capital City Gateway Park. It would be a sort of a community boating facility that would help to introduce kids and adults to paddling and potentially other types of boating. I know St. John's does sailing out of their boathouse now, so you know maybe that's part of it. But we're working on trails through here as well. And there's just a lot of potential here. So this is not going to be anything like Spa Creek or Back Creek. It's never going to be as developed as those creeks. So it has the potential to be kind of this central park for the city, really heavily naturalized. There's a lot of wildlife there today, although there's also a lot of sediment flowing in that's limiting the wildlife, I would say, to some degree. What we just completed for the public water access plan is this needs assessment report. It's called the has a wordy title, Annapolis Public Water Access Inventory Summary Report and Needs Assessment. We actually just submitted this to the state. They are providing us with a pretty good chunk of funding for Truxton Park improvements and condition that funding on receiving this document. So we put this together in May and June and sent it off. And I'm going to put, it's not on our website yet, but I'm just going to share some of what we learned through. We did a community survey. It's still active. It's on our website. We're still doing a lot of outreach around it, and it will be accessible through the rest of the summer, maybe into the fall. As you can see by question number 3, and this is based on about 400 responses so far. Maybe this was actually more like 350 at the time, but we're not getting anywhere near the kind of diverse response participation that we need to get for this. It's kind of typical, I would say, in the time I've been here. We have to be doing things differently to get the word out to non-white populations that should be participating in this, that have something to gain from this project. And what we're doing to address that right now, we are trying to do more outreach event. We're trying to table at events that are ongoing. So I anticipate we'll be going to things like the Parole summer concerts and other community events where we can reach people who aren't participating in the survey yet. We put flyers at all of the street end parks, so people who casually go to them will see, and there's a QR code that they can click on to take them to the survey. We put that same flyer on Annapolis Transit buses and bus shelters along Forest Drive. We're reaching out to schools along the Forest Drive corridor, the PTAs, and one of our we've actually tried to, as part of the project, we've recruited water access ambassadors, and so some of those folks have helped us kind of think of ways to Jess Packler, many of you know, I mean, she's very active at Eastport Elementary. She suggested reaching out to the PTAs at like Annapolis Middle or Tyler Heights Elementary or Georgetown East. So that's Parole Mills Elementary. So those are some of the things we're trying to do to change the participation in this. But one thing that I think we'll continue to see is that if you look at this bottom question about park access, a lot of people drive to the waterfront and a lot of people walk to the waterfront. We have very limited parking at most of our sites, and our sidewalk network has gaps in it. And so I think something that we're going to have to do is think about ways to get people to the waterfront without a car and safely. And on the right, you can see where the participation for the survey has come from. It's hard to see, but there is just a huge concentration of participants from the Eastport area that is pretty typical for these types of surveys. So we really struggle to get participation in the southern portion of the city. And so that's something that I think commission members could help with, and I can provide some information to help get the word out. So some more questions, and these are hard to see. I apologize, but first, number 11, do you experience any of the following challenges in accessing waterfront parks? And you can see lack of parking is high up here, but you have lack of sidewalks in red, lack of safe bicycle connections in green, lack of transit connections in purple, lack of accessibility for people with disabilities is in blue, and then other is free answer question and or option. And so I think that this is obviously reflective of the people who are participating. We will probably get different answers from if we get a broader participation. But the bottom, how easy is it for you to access a waterfront park from where you live? I mean, at first, you can see, almost 40% say it's easy for them. And so that says something about the kind of people who are participating in this. But it also says, if you look at this the other way, over 60% have less than an easy time accessing the waterfront. And so that's kind of the demographic I think we want to aim towards reaching. And then these are some of the statements that people provided when we asked those who find it difficult to get to the waterfront, how to describe that. These are just some of the 90 comments we got. And the only safe transportation option is to drive. So that in general, as a comprehensive planner, I'm really focusing on providing more transportation options to people. I mean, that's kind of the way of addressing a lot of different issues in the city, from vehicle, from emissions and congestion issues to, helping people get to resources and destinations easier. But you can see some of what we heard here. Which waterfront parks do you visit most frequently? So Quiet Waters, is the clear favorite here, but I think that this too will probably change if we get more participation. I mean, I think that Truxton, is probably going to get more. City Dock might get more, but yeah, you can kind of see. I mean, the fact that Sandy Point is so low on here, I think suggests that we're not, the Hispanic population is a huge part of there's documentation on the number of people of Hispanic background that go to Sandy Point, and they're not in the survey yet. So that's just one inference. Have any of the following discouraged you from using local waterfront parks? Very hard to see here, but in red, safety concerns. Green is poorly kept facilities. Purple is too far from home. Yellow is inadequate disability access. Blue is fees too high. I should say, I mean, none of the city parks charge a fee to access the waterfront. I mean, they have Pip Moira's fees for sure in some cases, but for certain things. But the Quiet Waters Park and Sandy Point are the two that I think people may be referring to here with fees. Limited open hours. Too crowded is the brown. This kind of olive is transportation or parking. This dark green is lack of restrooms. Gray is do not feel welcome. And the red is limited furnishings or amenities. And then, let's see, two more graphs here from the survey. What features or amenities would you most like to see more of at Waterfront Park? This is where I think we start getting into more of the meat of what your commission focuses on. I mean, I think you're seeing at the top here is trees and natural areas. So after paddle access, trees and natural areas ranks very high here. And I think it's just a testament to the fact that when you look at most of our street end parks, they have a hard edge. They don't have, most of them, probably half of them don't have really adequate shade. They could have more green infrastructure to manage stormwater. So I think that's part of why that trees and natural areas ranks high here. And then hard to see, but this is the last question in the survey, and it was about specific places in or near Annapolis where there's an opportunity for new public water access. You can see South Annapolis Yacht Center is the highest here. But Greenberry Point is right after that. I know you were just talking about that. I think that that really, I think that's becoming, has become a very high profile issue. And then Hawkins Cove is right below that. Wells Cove, College Creek in red, Truxton Park in purple. And it goes on. And then we had to interpret some of the response. Some people responded with more than one answer, and so we kind of aggregated the responses to come up with this chart. So another thing we did so far that we summarized in this document is we did a kind of like the equivalent of a bio blitz, but it was a site inventory of all of our existing water access locations. We came up with a survey tool, kind of like a field assessment survey that we had on iPads, and we had the benefit of some summer interns from the National Park Service, and we have an intern in our planning department as well. And it was about 15 people. On a Friday, we got organized in the morning, divided up the parks, and basically went out in teams. Each team had about 6 locations and used the same survey tool to assess every single one of the parks and take photos as part of the survey. There were like photo prompts as part of the survey. So we have this incredible record of each site that we tried to summarize in the report. And so you see, this is one question that I thought would be relevant to you all. The presence of shade trees. You can see that about 55% do have shade trees, about 45% do not. That's the green. These are some examples on the right of what the existing shade trees look like. In some cases, we were not picky in evaluating these shade trees. We weren't evaluating them for health, but we simply were looking at whether the tree was providing shade. And so you can see at Horn Point Park, there's an existing, might be a specimen tree. Acton Cove, has this alley of trees that were planted more recently, and then recent history. And then at Robert Eads Park, you have a number of trees that are being choked by vines today. They do provide shade. Some of them are not trees that you would plant today, that aren't considered, they're all native, but they're not considered trees that are going to live long. So with this new project, we're doing we're adding some trees, but we also have a planting plan that if these trees happen to die during construction, which they might, there's a path that's going around them. We have a planting plan to put in new trees that will build out that canopy. So part of the challenge at Robert Eads, just as an aside, is we're trying to improve access to the waterfront. We're replacing that broken boardwalk that takes people down, that doesn't take people down today to the water because it's missing a connection to the sidewalk. So we're putting an at-grade path that will go down to a seating pavilion at the waterfront with a simple ramp for a paddle paddle launch. And just trying to weave that path down is pretty challenging down to the waterfront. So on a related note, we assess shoreline conditions, and we basically just use these 5 categories: beach, living shoreline, which sometimes includes a beach, bulkhead, riprap, and concrete ramp. The only 2 concrete ramps are at Truxton Park and Tucker Street in West Annapolis. But you can see Herbie Sadler Park is the official name for one of the street end parks at the Maritime Museum in Eastport near 2nd Street. So you see it's a combination of beach access and some living shoreline. 6th Street is a pretty hard edge. We watched this couple pull these dinghies out of the water. It was painful to watch, but I know there's a plan to put a floating dock here. That's something the harbor master is working on. And at Tucker Street, there's this kind of mat that is covering. I think it's an erosion control device. This is one of the places where people put boats in from trailers. And then stormwater management infrastructure, aka green infrastructure. We're talking about green infrastructure here, not just pipe. We're not interested really in the. We did have a question about outfalls and inlets, but this is specifically about green infrastructure. And so the categories were stormwater retention, pervious pavement, bioswale, rain garden, and living shoreline. As you can see, we have quite a few living shorelines, at least partial living shorelines, and one on the St. Luke's is certainly one of those. And then Ellen Moyer Nature Park has this pretty impressive sort of a swale that goes to impervious paving that then takes the water to a retention area that's off the photo. And then at Amos Garrett, there's a nice stormwater inlet that goes to a rain garden that the community is maintaining, I believe. We saw that. That was a greenscape project this year. I think they were putting in a rain garden. So that's where we are with the project. I spoke for a while. It's hard to summarize this stuff.
We appreciate it, man.
Yeah. So I love sharing this image because, especially to people who aren't from Annapolis, because they don't think this is a public park, but it is. And I would say it's still probably not a place that everybody feels welcome going to. That's part of the problem, but it is one of our existing street end parks, and it's a real jewel of a place. I think many of the sites we have today would be very challenging to create in today's world. So it's a real blessing that we have them today. But yeah, happy to take questions if they have any.
All right. Let's turn it over to questions, Q&A. Can just turn your mic. Go ahead, Allison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much, Eric, for this presentation. Really great to see all the information that you guys have compiled. Happy to say I was one of your 400 responses, but if there's any other way that we can help get this information out to other residents, I'm sure myself and others on the commission would be happy to try and disseminate that. So I think one thing that would be helpful, you mentioned a couple times, you guys have a website up for the survey and a website up for some of this information. Be super helpful if you could shoot us the link for that. The one thing that I noted there at the end in your needs assessment, it feels like there's a lot of opportunities for ecological as well as people value, to put it not very eloquently, at some of these parks. You mentioned that only 55% have shade trees, and you mentioned 70% or so have hardened shorelines. And so I think, to me, I see those as opportunities for improving some of our goals related to trees, related to green infrastructure, related to shoreline enhancements, shoreline improvements within the city. So I think this not only provides information that you all need from a planning perspective, but also for some of the priorities that the Environmental Commission has worked on in the past in terms of finding areas where we can put trees, finding areas where we can improve the tree canopy in areas where it's been lost. The other thing is, I was wondering, you guys overlaid your social vulnerability with many of these being street end parks and us talking about water access in general. Has there been any discussion of which of these are most vulnerable to climate change and sea level rise, or what we expect, possible future losses to be of these areas, and maybe how we could mitigate that or plan for that?
That's a great point. We have not addressed that yet. And I think that that should be part of this. I mean, I just sort of superficially, I think of many of these sites as good uses of places that already flood a lot, and so they may not be accessible when there's a flood event. But yeah, they're impacted by those flood events, and there's sediment issues and in fact, even a place like Acton Cove Waterfront Park that has, it's probably, for people who visit it, it may seem like one of our best maintained parks, waterfront parks, but that gets a lot of flooding, and it has some issues with its walkway that it's scouring, and issues with the bases of some of its lampposts that get submerged. And I think that some of it may not be which sites are going to be, I guess we could look at, like 2050 and 2100 to see which sites may just be completely off the map. But I think in the near term, it's more like, what are the impacts that we need to be prepared for? That might be maybe the way to think about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you bring up a good point too, is that having these parks located where they are now is definitely helping maintain the floodplain in a more natural state. So I do agree that there's served some purpose with that respect as well. We just may need to start also looking for some like top of street park locations in addition to street end. And if I could throw in one more question or comment here. Very happy to see this water access being a focus. It's something that our group has talked about multiple times. I think also, if it's not part of this, maybe it needs to just be, included as a comment that it also depends on water quality. So we can have all the access we want, and there is a certain inherent value just to be able to see the water and walk along the shoreline. But we are still missing out in a lot of places in the city on being able to fish, consume fish, water contact advisories and things like that. So also including, if not directly in this, but just as a side note, that we need to continue to work on our water quality issues so that people can actually fully utilize the water once they are able to access it. Thanks.
That's a great
Especially
point.
with that issue with the crabs recently too.
Which issue you referring to, Randy?
Just the crab report we had recently.
Oh yeah, the decline. Yeah.
I was also gonna, I was gonna mention the possibility of new parks. And maybe there's a way to also include a legacy building aspect for, people that may be underserved, some of the underserved communities, using that as a springboard to preserve or present some new parks. And also a youth, looking at maybe even the Maryland Conservation Act of 2022 as a bill that you could use to leverage funds to pay for those types of environmental outcomes and credit, credits that you may want from some of that. And one of the main reasons why we wanted to invite you here was to see how some of these data points align with what, say, for example, Jackie Gill's office may be focused on, or some other departments, public works and other offices that kind of have their eyes scoped out on the same challenges, those same top 3 challenges. Another idea I just thought of listening is because these areas that are considered to be most vulnerable, using that vulnerability data as a means to advocate for some type of fund for natural disaster fund. Whereas if something was to happen, they could have some relief funds readily accessible to them, those that are in these more vulnerable communities. Because it's almost like what we're saying is that there is a challenge here, and there are a lot of vulnerabilities as it relates to climate change or the sea level. But in the same breath, we're just kind of it becomes the same tale again of the tale of 2 cities. If you can afford to relieve yourself during so possible flood or natural disaster, then you'll be fine. But if you're not, then you're just kind of there's nothing in place, And I feel like that this commission, the environmental commission, could stand to serve to advocate for those types of collaborative innovations that may not be the typical status quo, but could be very beneficial.
Yeah. One thing you're going to find in the comprehensive plan, it's not this plan necessarily, although I think that we could have it in this plan. So we just haven't gotten there yet. But we do have a recommendation in the comp plan to introduce social vulnerability as part of the CIP, the capital improvement program, to really be, some places they just call it equity. They just say for places that have been historically underinvested, that there's a way to correct that, in how we invest through our capital improvement program. So that could definitely be part of this plan as well. And to reiterate that, and I agree that there is the idea of like the legacy of we're definitely trying to reverse the trend that has happened, over the last century and plus. And some of the potential park, I would say, aside from, City Dock is kind of its own unique project, but everything else that we're really putting money into, I think fits in that category of addressing kind of structural inequities. I didn't mention the Cars Beach project because it's really not a public place yet, but that's a big time project that it's going to be a high profile cultural site.
It is high profile. It definitely is high profile already.
Yeah.
And more projects like that is what I'm basically saying. What are the access? What other city-owned locations that may be dormant or vacant that the city may not be using, but still owns the property, could be transformed, easements, and given ownership by community grassroots organizations to do something with the land, necessarily create trails, parks, water access points.
Yeah, sometimes it seems like Annapolis, we're squeezing more and more out of this small place, but it is amazing. I do hear of underutilized waterfront places every week, it seems. I just got it. This is maybe a little bit different than what you're talking about, but just over in the West Annapolis area, I met with a resident there who's on their civic association board, and she's just really gung-ho about creating more public water access. Weems Creek has the least public water access of all of our major creeks, and Brian Callahan and I got a tour with her on Friday, this last Friday, and there's an active effort to create a new water access location at Tolson Street, which is it's near the elementary school, but it is an existing trail going all the way down to Weems Creek. And I believe the councilwoman is going to soon be introducing a resolution to create that as an official park. So
Yeah.
anyhow,
Yeah, we can talk more about that, but yeah, great stuff. Go ahead, Jackie.
So yeah, Eric, but did you include in your presentation, I couldn't tell, our plans for the paddle park on Weems Creek?
no, I referenced it, but
Yeah,
I didn't really talk about it much.
Yeah. So we're still actively looking at that. That's, an issue, of course. There's the Naval Academy. Yeah, controls, or it's a federal government part of that property that we have to, there's some jockeying and agreements that have to be done. So it's a little complicated. And Eric, you might know more about it because I haven't been as involved. But the idea is to make that area into a park, clean it up and make it to a park and make it a paddle park. So that could be an area where we could do kayak share, Eric.
Definitely. Yeah.
So underneath that bridge there, and then connect it, the idea is to be part of the bike trail system too. We'll go through that area, I believe.
And DNR just launched their fishing mentor program. What about that possibility of a fishing pond or a fishing lake, a man-made fishing pond or fishing lake, where people could come and learn how to fish? So, and as a precursor to going out into the bay or into the deeper waters, almost like a precursor landing spot. But again, city, if there's land or space that is dormant or vacant, these are the types of projects that could really drive some of the underlying activities that would align with what you're doing.
Yeah, and Eric, I wanted to ask you, I can't remember if we talked about this when I was looking at your early drafts of this project, but did you get the lists of the HOAs from Hillary? So maybe we can get this survey out to the city HOAs.
Yeah, we do have that information, and I should say, I've reached out to, we've done a lot already, but I think we probably almost need to go back and do the same thing again. Everybody has a lot on their minds. There's other issues they're more focused on, and so I think we just we made an appeal to the wards that are kind of landlocked. I guess it's 3, 4, and 5. And I think we really want to find a way to get to community events in those wards.
So another idea I had was, I don't know if we pursued anything with Erin Lee or Erica Griswold.
No, not yet.
To try, maybe we can give them a couple of, iPads or, laptops, and they could either set up somewhere where they could just, people passing by through properties, get them to participate, or, I know Erica's knocked on doors, and if they had like an iPad or something with the survey to get people to participate in the survey.
That's a great point.
Yeah,
By walking around the Hacka properties or, knocking on doors in certain neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And I heard you mention events. You may want to add to your list the Juneteenth event, annual Juneteenth event, the Kunta Kinte annual event, the Family Day annual.
Yeah, Family Day. That's a good one.
The sixth family, and I'll be at that event.
When is the Family Day event? Do you know offhand?
When is it? This Saturday from 10 to 7 p.m. Please.
Yeah, and again, if we could get some staff that would have like some, iPads or something that they could just get people to take the survey right then and there.
Yeah, and if you want me to get up on the stage and tell everybody what the people are going around doing, I could do that.
That would be great. Yeah, we have this flyer that Mitchell made that has a QR code. That's the easiest way.
Yeah.
That's a really easy way to do it. That's a great idea.
And the Kunta Kinte Festival, annual Kunta Kinte, and youth sports organizations.
That's a great point.
Their parents. you'd be surprised what these youth coaches are able to use as leverage with their players and their parents. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of players, student athletes within these sports
great.
organizations
That is a
like
great point.
Generals Highway or Annapolis All-Stars or Running Mavericks. All it would simply take is a relationship with the coaching staff to say, hey, I need you to get this out to every parent if you want your child to get a, whatever, right? And then there you have 200 to 500 parents that live within the city limits that you could get take part in the survey fairly quickly and fairly easily. And it would kind of create that relationship, Jeremy.
I was just gonna say, one event I saw today is this National Night Out on Tuesday. A bunch of city departments are gonna be there for that. Seems like an obvious and pretty on theme place to also try to get more survey participants, even if they aren't necessarily all from the city. There will definitely be a lot of people there, I assume, at the Bush Library.
And I just want to add, I was the person, me and the Boys and Girls Club, we coordinated the first ever national night out in the city of Annapolis. That was back in 2006, I believe.
Wow.
So it's lovely to see that how it's expanded and grown, but that's definitely a great place to make those connections as well. Last year, there was one in Clay Street and Annapolis Gardens and Annapolis Woods. I'm not sure the locations that it'll be at this year, but definitely a good place to make those connections too.
That's good to hear.
And I also just want to make, if there's a link or the QR code, but also a link that we can share ourselves, be sure to send that to Randy or Allison, who can share with the rest of us.
I'll follow up. Yeah, I'll follow up with an email probably tomorrow with this flyer and just some other information to the website and stuff. So yeah, no problem. Before I forget, I do want to say regarding this this Capital City Gateway Park off Route Boulevard. This is the site. If you're having trouble locating it, it's next to the archives building that's on Route Boulevard there, and there's a large grassy field, but Anne Arundel County is also very interested in helping to do this project, and they've actually budgeted the funds to do a feasibility study for the site for this current fiscal year. So I think we're going to be moving forward with it just to kind of understand what's possible here and how we can move forward on the design. So it's pretty exciting, and we've just tried to do some fundraising already with some federal opportunities, but I think that it'll be a real high visibility site. So,
Eric, I have heard some environmental concerns about that project and that site. So if you want to, I can follow up with you offline. I would love to schedule a site visit if you're open to it, to sort of look at things and share those with you.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, if anybody doesn't have anything else for you, Eric, I'll thank you for your time, and much appreciated. We'll try to pick apart as best we can the meeting notes from this session and send you an email kind of detailing what some ideas and thoughts that came out here tonight. And,
okay.
And another main reason why you're here today is because, like I said, a lot of the data points that you're looking at align very closely with the data points of what we are, in this group are working with and on. And so we really want to move away from us working on things in silos as it relates to this kind of work, so that we can eventually get everybody's information and data to be in sync as it relates to the projects and developments that we look forward to. And that's on the state level too, and the federal level.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Gotcha.
Our challenges do not stop at the state lines or county lines. They overlap, especially as it relates to our waterways and things like that.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much, and we will move on.
All right, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Eric.
See you.
And so looking at the agenda, our next thing on the agenda is reporting out on things that kind of fall under Jackie Guild and Racine's umbrella. So maybe if you all want to take a moment to touch on, replant Annapolis, Hawkins Cove, and any other developments or activities that you may want to share with us today.
Okay,
Did you
hi,
say-
it's Ray. I'm sorry, Jackie.
Go ahead, Racine.
I sent out a request for information on demographics for Replant Annapolis, and Suzanne got back to me, and the two people that can give us more information are out of the office right now. I guess it's summer and vacation time, but I will be getting more information from Suzanne at some point about the demographics of the Replant Annapolis
Okay.
Tree Trooper program.
And is that program implementing, have they started, or where they at in the process?
No, what they were planning on is to plan and work out the details of projects this summer, and then this fall plant what they were talking about planting. So the projects, they're still in discussion and organization.
Have they begun talking about how they're going to put out the RFPs to contractors to do the actual plantings?
Well, I asked Suzanne about that, and again, that's something I'm waiting to hear information back from her on.
Okay, cool. If and when that happens, if you could just possibly, if you try to encourage that some type of emphasis or preference be made towards.
Yeah, Brian
minority-
Adams, I think
but-
Brian Adams has been out of the office for a few days and maybe a week, and he would be another source. So I can check with him as well.
Yeah, if you could try to maybe advocate for some type of preference for minority-owned vendors to actually get, contracted to do the tree plantings, especially in, some certain spaces. So.
Right. I also have an update for RFPs, requests for proposals through the city. There is a web page that the city has that lists all requests for proposals. I have to say that the list is not, it's not in date order, but it's there. So anytime something is put out to bid, it goes on the city's website. The city also works with, hold on one second. They also work with the Maryland Marketplace, and they put out bids there. You have to be a member. You have to be, to take advantage of information about bids on this website. There is, what we try to do is to focus on using minority businesses and women-owned businesses, but we don't have anything right now in place to reach out specifically to those businesses.
Okay, thank you, Racine. That was some good info, and I'll definitely try to think about that and maybe look that up myself and check that out. So definitely some good information. What else? Racing, you were working on some grants, I remember a little while back. Is that still in motion, or
I was working with Eric Lashinsky to help him apply for a grant through, I think it was National Fish and Wildlife Service.
okay.
And we're still waiting to hear back about that. I'm personally, I am absolutely looking for a grant to try to hire a intern
Okay.
to help Jackie and I out with some aspects of our programs. But beyond that, that's what I'm working on.
Cool. If I see something, I will shoot it your way as far as the grant.
Absolutely. I welcome any information you want to give me, especially reaching out to minority owned, women owned, underrepresented companies.
Okay. Yeah, that's become my sweet spot, it seems, lately. So it's a great thing. It's really beautiful to watch. In any industry, not even just the environmental industry, really. It could be sports, it could be any, many industries. So Jackie, did you have something?
Yeah, so you wanted to know about Hawkins Cove. I mean, Hawkins Cove continues to slowly drag along. The city of Annapolis had finished its RFP, but because there were some stormwater considerations and infrastructure considerations, it took them quite a while to get there. They had to do some assessments and redesign of the concept plan. But so what the trust decided to do is they wanted to look at the cities. They have their own RFP reviewer and that they use, their contractor, and just to make sure that everything was compatible with the trust's objectives still, they asked to see the city's RFP. They have their contractor reviewing it. And as soon as the trust gets done, then we can put it out for bid. Should be anytime now. This was my update as of last week from the Department of Public Works.
You mean you're talking about the work that's going to be done? You can put it out for bid.
We can put out the design RFP for Hawkins Cove as soon as we get it back from the trust. Related to Hawkins Cove, because we want to dredge a channel so that we can actually get water taxi back there, so the kayak launch, paddleboard, canoe launch we're planning can actually function. We need the channel dredged. So a couple of weeks ago, I met with DNR because they control the waterway improvement funds that go for dredging. And I started explaining the Hawkins Cove project, and that it was not only a water access project and a habitat restoration project, but that it was also a social equity project. And because we're trying to provide water access in an area to an underserved area and lower income area. And they weren't aware that of the Hackham buildings above there and the lower income communities around that area. So it turned from a we don't think so to wow, you're checking off all the boxes for us conversation. So DNR encouraged the city to get in an application for grant funding through the Waterway Improvement Fund to dredge Hawkins Cove, the channel there. So I'll be working with the harbor master to get that done before the September 15th deadline. And DNR seemed pretty enthusiastic about it. So they'd help us, try to get it through. They can't promise, but they like the idea. So that was very encouraging. That'll really improve that project, especially if we get the funding at the same time we're trying to get the concept.
Do you know who was somebody you were working with at DNR, like that was working with that office?
Yes. I'm going to say the wrong name. The young man I was dealing with there. I met with Matt Fleming, who is as well, who's the supervisor. But oh gosh, his name just went right out of my head.
Donegan.
What?
Claudia Donegan? No.
No. Claudia's not involved with the dredging program. In fact, Claudia first pointed me in their direction.
Oh, okay. We used to breed dogs.
I want to say Fielding is his last name, but that's not right.
Okay. I was just curious because
Yeah, it's the person in charge of the Waterway Improvement Fund dredging program, and then his supervisor, which is Matt Fleming, that I met with in person. And then also
The St. Mary's project,
what?
the St. Mary's project,
St. Mary's
that,
is going for before historic preservation Thursday night for administrative review on their concept plan. And I met with John Tower today in historic preservation, and he says that the historic preservation and feels that it's a good plan, and that it's hoping that it'll get through the commission. This would be the largest living shoreline.
I'm getting
breaking up a little
feedback.
bit. Yeah. Do they already have funding for that project? That St.
The
Mary?
St. Mary's has funding through the DNR for design and permitting. And that's kind of where they're left right now. They're trying to decide what their next step is gonna be, because they need to make the Historic Preservation Commission happy, and they need to make the harbor master happy. And but it sounds like they have a project that is a hybrid of some sorts that will make hopefully make everyone happy. And that's where that project stands right now. DNR has funded that piece of it, and we're just waiting to see what the next plan is that they're going to offer.
Okay, I'm only asking because I could really see the potential of this St. Mary's project, if it's carried out, is a success as a pilot for a lot of other shoreline.
And if anyone wants to participate or listen in to the meeting on Thursdays at 7:00.
Yeah, I'd like to be checked out. Allison?
I had a quick question for Jackie on the Hawkins Cove dredging piece. So have you all identified a disposal site for the dredge material, or do you have an idea for beneficial use? I know the Naval Academy is interested in beneficial use of dredge material at Greenberry Point. So they were looking for any and all dredge material that could come ideally from, the Annapolis area, because the cost of the transport would be less, but anywhere within the county they were interested in. So that might be an opportunity to reuse that material to help with our wetlands in the local area.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Allison. No, so until we get into the application, I don't even know if that's required in the application. I have to go through it with Beth Bellis, which I have to do this week. We won't even get to that point yet.
Okay, good question, Vice Chair.
And also, I wanted to mention that I don't know why this fell in my lap, I guess because it reduces carbon emissions, but the electric ferry and the mayor is moving forward with the idea of electric ferry taxi, whatever you want to call it. I've encouraged him to make it part of a greater mobility plan. And I attended a webinar that the federal, this is the harbor master calling me.
Spoke him
In a minute.
up.
So I might have just said something that she didn't agree with.
Spoke him up.
I'll call her back in a minute. Anyway, the Department of Transportation, federal government, they had a webinar today on grants for ferries, and one of them is for electric ferries or low emissions ferries. and some grants are for first-time ferry programs. So I was on that webinar today to, figure out if we can get our ferry grant funded, including the infrastructure and the operating costs and the preventive maintenance on it as well. And I've had some conversations with Department of Transportation prior to that webinar. So that grant application is due the 6th of September. So again, I'm meeting with some staff later this week in Public Works and with the harbor master to talk about strategy, different kinds of vessels. We've looked at some are off-the-shelf designs that can be customized to the city of Annapolis, and different sizes. And so we'll be talking about that when the mayor gets back from vacation next week. I'll be meeting with him again about the electric ferry.
Can you shoot me that link to that? Because I think I may know some others that may want to submit as well, like Seafarers and other organizations.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Allison?
I was just wondering if Jackie was hoping for a letter of support from the AEC on either one of the grant applications that you've mentioned.
That is completely up to you. I think for the dredging, I imagine the AEC would support that. On the electric ferry, I don't want to presume anything. I know there's a lot of different opinions on it.
Yeah,
Well,
so I mean, I guess the request is if you could just be in touch with us, especially if we do end up taking August off, that'll be before our next meeting.
Yeah.
So
Because I
whatever,
know for the federal grant, for the ferry grant, they do require letters of support.
yeah. So any information that you can share, I know sometimes it's hard to get these things written well in advance, but any information that you can share with respect to the city's proposals. Mr. Chair, I don't know if you are comfortable with it. I'll let you weigh in terms of process of how we would do that between now and then if we don't have a meeting. But I just wanted to ask Jackie directly if she would be looking for letters of support.
We would be on both projects.
We can.
So if you want to, one thing I would suggest, if you would like to do a letter of support for both projects or one of those projects, to do it in July, you could do that.
In July. It is July.
I know.
Oh, you mean in the next 4 days?
No, I mean, or, decide today that you want to do it, and, you could vote on it or whatever process you want to take to decide if you would like to do it. Yeah. And then, so that you can make that decision during one of your meetings, which would be today.
So do we want to create a letter of support for those two initiatives group? We'll take a vote on that.
Well, we have 4 out of the 5 of us, right? So I think might as well weigh in, and I'd be supportive of both of those.
Right. I would be too. So we need more than 2. Well, okay. Anybody else want to weigh in?
I don't know, maybe I'm the one that Jackie was thinking of on the electric ferry thing. I'd like to see a little bit more about that, but it's not directly related to the ferry itself. So I don't know if the ferry is more about the system and things like that, the grant proposal, or if it's literally just about the physical boat itself.
The grant would be to purchase a boat and also the electric infrastructure, operating expenses and preventive maintenance on everything. The DOT does favor proposals that address a need, reduce carbon emissions, have a social equity piece, and connect other modes of transportation. And the idea with the ferry was that it would provide access for people who may not have cars, or to connect parts of the city that, to people that may live in parts of the city that otherwise may not come downtown. I know that the mayor would like to extend the ferry and taxi service over to Hawkins Cove so that people in that area could use vouchers, et cetera, to use. And that if we have the electric ferry, it wouldn't be a no charge ferry as well. So it's not going to be an expense sometimes now people can't afford to use a water taxi, but the idea of the electric ferry was that it was an equity piece, that there'll be no charge to use it.
I like it.
So people that live in Eastport could use it to get downtown, back and forth, to come to events, et cetera.
My thought is, I would love to see some equity in the vendor that actually is the ferry.
Oh, and that's the other thing, Randy, you just made me think of that when you said that. And also part of the criteria DOT uses to evaluate the grant proposals is that there be some workforce development as part of it. Some training, some education, and actual jobs. And we know that that we wanted to train captains to actually operate the taxi, the ferry service.
Awesome. Okay.
Does that answer your question, Allison?
Good.
Yes.
Okay.
So where are we with the vote? Are we gonna just hold off on the vote for right now?
Well, we lost Paul.
Yeah. Good.
But we have 4, and I think there were 2 that support. I think as long as I would like to see the proposals, but I think, Mr. Chair, would you be comfortable with a motion, a vote that just says, we are comfortable with these projects generally and can write a letter of support between now and September?
Yeah, I think it's a fair statement. I agree to that.
We're 3 out of 5, so I think we still have a quorum.
Maybe Paul will rejoin you too.
Okay. We'll come back to that by next 20 minutes.
Okay. All right, I'm going to call Beth Bellis back and see what she wants.
Thank you, Jackie.
You're welcome.
So moving on in the agenda, the MIR project, Environmental Matters, Quiet Waters. I'm sure you all saw the recent activity regarding Quiet Waters Park that the Alderman Savage has been putting out. Does anybody want to speak to Quiet Waters Park and development?
Is this the Parkside Preserve project?
Yeah.
So I did attend a walkthrough. Jackie was there, Alderman Savage was there, City Councilwoman Rodbean was there, with Reliable and with Eric Michelson from Anne Arundel County Watershed Protection and Restoration. So basically we did a walkthrough at Quiet Waters Park to go look at one of the outfalls from the sediment traps. And this is one of the areas where Alderman Savage and others have documented before that there has been an intermittent stream, an ephemeral stream. I'm getting my stream classifications mixed up here. That has now sort of eroded away some of that sediment, some of the leaves and topsoil, and is starting to kind of channel. So I attended that and just wanted to express the concern of the AEC. We obviously have weighed in on this project several times. Basically, the contractor indicated that they were, open to some additional changes to the existing sediment and erosion control measures that are on the site. And I believe Eric Michelson from the county had some recommendations that he was going to go over with them. They did not seem, I won't say they were not, did not seem as open to the concept of, revisiting any stormwater management controls after the site was finished, which was one of the things that we had heard from Alderman Savage and others, that, the indication that the sediment and erosion controls were already sort of concerning with their, the way that they are designed, that there may be some additional concerns about whether conditions meaning weather conditions, water volume, et cetera, have changed with respect to the adequacy of the stormwater management practices as well. So, you know, at my role, I thought in that meeting and what I did was express our concern, let folks know that we are following this, and also that we would support and like to see any changes that are recommended by Mr. Michelson implemented on the site. I have tons of photos and videos too that I took that day that I can upload to our AEC folder.
I know that they are, that Public Works has, in the city, has been working with the county Bureau of Watershed Restoration on revisions to site controls. And they should have something that they can release to Alderman Savage and to the Environmental Commission tomorrow.
Great. Thanks, Jackie. Is that something that we could expect to come to us, or should I reach out to someone tomorrow and ask
You know, I
for
guess
that?
if Alderman Savage will share it with you, because the city staff will share it with Alderman Savage.
Okay.
I'll probably see it at the same time that he sees it. I don't think there'd be a problem with the if I shared it with the Environmental Commission, but you might get it faster from Rob because I'm in meetings all day, so I might not even see it till later in the day. Yeah, there'll be something written up. And then, you know, I pointed out to Alderman Savage that the bond is over a $4 million bond on that project, and it's held for a year after the project is completed to make sure. And the reason is because we look to make sure that the stormwater controls that were part of the permit are working, you know, up to par with what the volume of stormwater are receiving, and if they need to be tweaked at all. And then also it's to deal with any offsite issues that may have been caused by the stormwater, which is one of the things we were looking at beyond the property line of the site. So, and, you know, and the city can hold that bond longer if there needs to be work done there. So we don't release that. I think it's a $4.5 million bond until the city is satisfied with the stormwater controls. And Alderman Savage was shocked that it was actually that big of a number and said, well, that's far more than we would ever need to do any restoration work off-site if it was required. So the money is there within the bond to do anything we need to do.
Yeah, obviously, I think the priority is getting those sediment controls upgraded so that we don't have to do restoration. So hopefully that's where you guys are headed.
I'm sorry, I have to jump off again and talk to the harbor master.
Good, no problem. All right, so is there anything else there, Allison, you wanted to touch on?
That's all I had with that. Obviously, Randy, you took our letter and represented us well at Environmental Matters on that issue as well. So nothing further to add.
Okay, and I'll be sure again to be at the next one and reiterate again what the status is to them. The golf course expansion project is next on the agenda. We just have two more things on the agenda. I know that Mr. O'Leary, Bill, gave us a very extensive report last meeting. I did hear some word about, you know, the possibility that the project might not be, it's still in limbo, whether it's a go or not. So I guess we'll just plan to continue to keep our ear involved and just stay on top of that. Does anyone have anything to share on the golf course project expansion? All right, cool. Okay, moving right along. And the last thing that's on the agenda that I had was the DEIJ report, which we already kind of touched on a few of those things. In that wheelhouse, just dealing with equity and projects, equity and access, or even equity in who we have at the table on our commission or in other spaces. that impact the commissions or other environmental aspects throughout the city. Excuse me, throughout the city and the county and the state. So there are a few grants that I was sharing with different organizations and around this Maryland Conservation Act of 2022. And so the act essentially deals with allowing for organizations to pay for environmental outcomes. And so what I've been doing recently is kind of just aligning some projects with organizations and trying to align different concepts that make sense and that are fit throughout Annapolis and Anne Arundel County. And really, I've been looking at some open spaces, private and other owners as well, looking into some type of developments. So we are having our end of the summer symposium, if anybody wants to come to that, for the C Stream program for the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center. It's going to be next week on August 5th from 10 to 2 p.m. And then after that, we're going to go canoeing down at Cirque. So if anybody wants to come and touch the road, as we would say, or in this case, touch the water, feel free to reach out. And you're more than welcome to attend either virtually or in person. And again, the importance of connecting with these environmental interns and these environmental research that they're putting together. And I'm sure Chesapeake Bay Foundation has some interns do that, don't they?
We don't have any interns right now, but Randy, let's connect offline. We now have our oyster restoration vessel docked at Cirque. So if you guys want somebody from our organization, maybe me, maybe somebody else who might be available if the timing works out, we'd be happy to talk to the C Stream interns about our organization and the work that we're going to be doing there at Cirque.
Love it, definitely. Great idea. And definitely we'll talk offline.
Yeah, also Randy, and everybody on the commission, I am looking for funding for an intern to assist Jackie and I with the way that I look at it, it's outreach and education. We want to update our website, and we need someone to come in and do that. And so I'm looking for an intern or a grant to pay for an intern to come help us with our outreach and education.
How much are you looking to get for funding that intern, say for example?
Yeah, so I've thought about this, and I don't know with interns. I don't know.
With our
So
interns, we charge, we pay them around $6,000 to $9,000. It's usually around 6,000.
6,000 for how long?
10 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks.
8 to 10 weeks?
Yeah, it's for the
Okay.
summer, so. We end around August 5th, the first or second week of the month, and it starts around.
Yeah, what I was looking for was some funding that I can apply for in somewhere between now and the fall, and have someone work for us during the fall months into the winter. And it's for outreach and education and updating our website and making sure everything is in order there as far as environmental sustainability and resilience goes. So Randy, if you hear of anything, let me know.
Well, you could consider CERC and Smith, CRC. Chesapeake Research Consortium, so that's an option. So if you want,
Okay.
I can make you with this executive director, and you guys can hash out some details and discussions and see what could be a fit.
Okay, I'll check that out. Thank you.
That was pretty much all I had is DEIJ. there's one project I'm working on with the school system to go around and do public speaking engagements to encourage kids to get into environmental careers and enjoy or talk, access and education to the environment. So that's something that's being put together right now. So that's all I had on my reporting on that aspect. Next month, our meeting is going to be postponed, and we'll give everyone a break. And then our September meeting will go on as accordingly. And by then, me and Allison will have a full description and some girth to each one of our categories and our subcommittees that we are a part of. So that way, each time we have our meeting going into the fall, September season, fall, winter season, each time we meet, we'll be reporting out on our subcommittee group. But it'd be good to have some framework for that. So we're gonna put that together and have that for you all by September. All right. Anybody else have anything lastly? Comments, statements?
Do you want to revisit our motion?
Yeah, so what do
We
you
lost
think?
Paul again.
Yeah. What do you think? Let me see if I can.
But I mean, you and Jeremy already indicated that you would support those letters, so that may be the majority that we need.
And I do have to hop off like right at 9 o'clock. So if we want to support those two things, I'll go ahead and motion.
Yeah.
Not sure the phrasing, but motion to support those
I'm
two.
still learning too, Jeremy. Feel like I'm on a case of Law and Order or something. Little motion to accept. So okay. So now I guess me and Allison, I guess we will look into next steps in that. If that's being accepted.
Yeah, so I guess the next step is we'll wait to hear from Jackie or Racine, whoever's ahead on those two proposals, to get the actual proposals and information on the grant programs themselves so that we can write a relevant and effective letter.
Sounds good. Okay, well, thank you all. I'm sure everybody's gonna go and get on the regular evening schedule, get something to eat and what have you. But thank you for attending and participating and being active, engaging. And thank you for CATV and Racine, Jackie, and everyone else's participation. I think we're making some good progress as it relates to our commission members, as well as just getting our foot in some of the community activities that are going on, bridging the gap between some of our development project construction policies and things like that. So we got a busy fall, winter ahead. So, but it's been I think we made some great progress throughout the summer and early last spring. So that's all I have. Does anyone else have anything else? All right, cool. Well, thank you all. And this is the meeting adjourning and over and out. And thank you. Have a good time. Rest of your evening and rest of your week.